श्री गणेशाय नमः। श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्। सुखं नित्यं स्वप्रकाशं व्यापकं नामरूपयोः अधिष्ठानं बुद्ध्यबोध्यं बुद्धेर्दृग्यत्तु निर्मलम् अपारं सर्ववेदान्त वेद्यं प्रत्यक्परं महः तदेवाहं न मत्तोऽन्यत इति मे निश्चिता मतिः। So, in last class we started analyzing who is a jiva, who is kutastha, and to whom punya and papa belong. In that we identified that to chidabhasa alone, to chidabhasa, punya, papa, going to higher worlds and lower worlds, these attributes belong. But then we further analyze that in reality they do not belong to chidabhasa also, because chidabhasa is nothing but reflected consciousness, the reflection of consciousness which is reflected on the reflective surface which is formed by intellect, buddhi. And because it is formed by intellect, buddhi, the attributes of reflective surface are seen on reflection, just as the attributes of reflective surface are seen in reflection or on reflection. In the same way, the attributes of intellect are seen in chidabhasa, reflective consciousness, reflected consciousness, and consequently the consciousness, pure consciousness, chaitanya, which forms the substratum adhisthana for both. Then we analyzed what is the exact definition, precise definition of jiva. There we analyzed that jiva is nothing but the one who has upadhi as individual ignorance, vyashti ajnana. So vyashti maya, which was referred to as avidya, and because he is under the control of maya, that is avidya, he gets bound. Now who is Ishvara, that is going to be analyzed, and further what is Brahman. Ishvara Swarupa Varnanam. Mayayam प्रतिबिंबित चिदाभासः मायाधिष्ठान चैतन्यञ्च इति उभयं मिलित्वा ईश्वर इत्युच्यते। अयं च ईश्वरः मेघाकाशतुल्यः भवति। अयमेव अंतर्यामी इत्युच्यते। मायायाम, in maya, प्रतिबिंबित चिदाभासः, चिदाभास, the reflected consciousness, प्रतिबिंबित, reflected. So the chidabhasa which has reflected in maya, consciousness available as reflection in maya, that reflected consciousness and the chaitanya, pure consciousness, which forms the substratum of that maya, they together are referred to as Ishvara. So Ishvara is nothing but Brahman and reflection of Brahman available in Maya. Ayam cha Ishvara. Now this Ishvara is comparable with Meghakasha in the examples which we saw. So we can correlate, we can compare Meghakasha with Ishvara. How? Just as the Meghakasha, the cloud space, had the reflection of space in water vapors, the particles contained within, as well as the space, total space, which or the total space in which clouds were suspended, together they formed Meghakasha. Meghakasha was composed of two. One, reflected space, the reflection of space which was available in water vapors contained within the clouds, and the space in which clouds were suspended. For Ishvara, now author has said, Ayameva antaryami ityuchyate. This Ishvara alone is referred to as or called as antaryami. Antaha san yamayati, dwelling within everyone, being within everyone, the one who controls. Antaha san yamayati, yamayati controls. That is called as antaryami. Sarvesham antah san niyantritvat prerakatvat antaryami. Why he is called antaryami? Sarvesham antastha san. Sarvesham antastha, being within everyone, dwelling in each and individual jiva, or in each and every aspect of this creation. Niyantritvat, being the controller. Prerakatvat, being the prompter, or being preraka, the one who gives chaitanya, sentience. Being so, he is called as antaryami. Ayam, this Ishvara, he is nityamuktaha, ever liberated, he is never bound. Swaswarupavaraka jnana bhavat tasya. Why is he always liberated, never bound? Swaswarupa avaraka ajnana abhava. Abhava, absence. Ajnana abhava, absence of ignorance. Ignorance of what? Swaswarupa. The veiling, avaraka. The ignorance that veils the knowledge of one's own true nature. Such ignorance is absent in Ishvara. So Ishvara does not or has never forgotten what its true nature is. Such ignorance which veils our own true nature, that is present for Jiva, but for Ishvara it is absent. And because such avarana, such veiling is absent for Ishvara, he is always liberated, he is never bound. Ataeva, therefore, janma maranadi bandha pratitihi asya nasti. Therefore, janma maranadi bandha pratiti, the experiences of the experience of bondage in form of birth and death, the experience of bondage, bandha, in terms of birth and death, is not there for Ishvara. Tata eva, thus alone, Ishvara nityamuktaha ityuchyate. Ishvara is called as or referred to as nityamukta, ever liberated. Kincha Ishvaraha sarvajnaha. in reality, actually, Ishvara Sarvajna. Ishvara is Sarvajna, omniscient. तस्य उपायभूतमाय तस्योपाधिभूतमायायाः शुद्धसत्त्वगुणप्रधानत्वात् अस्य सर्वज्ञत्वसिद्धिः. तस्य उपाधिभूतमायायाः, the Maya which forms its conditioning. Maya is the conditioning for Ishvara. That Maya has been described as Shuddha Sattva Pradhana, being predominant in pure Sattva. Let's go back to understanding how it has been classified. When the conditioning is being described or explained for Jiva and Ishvara, visually make three different parts. In your mind, make three different parts. One is Sattva Pradhana and other one is Tama Pradhana. One is Sattva Pradhana and other one is Tama Pradhana. From Tama Pradhana Prakriti or Maya, which is predominant in Tamas, from that all Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Prapancha is created. Actually, Sukshma and Sthula Prapancha alone gets created, where Pancha Mahabhutas, etc. are produced. What about Prakriti, Maya, which is predominant in Sattva? Divide it into two parts. One which is Shuddha Sattva Pradhana, where Shuddha Sattva alone is present, and the other one where Sattva is there, but that Sattva Guna is overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. The Sattva Guna which is overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. The Maya which is predominant in Sattva Guna and where there is least trace of Rajoguna and Tamoguna, such a Maya is called as Shuddha Sattva Guna Pradhana. And this forms the conditioning for Ishvara. Because Sattva Guna is in the qualities, has the quality that is Jnana. Sattva Guna is Jnana. Sattvat Sanjayate Jnanam, in Bhagavad Gita it is said. Because it is predominant in Jnana, knowledge is the nature of Sattva Guna. Ishvara, which has conditioning Sattva Guna or predominant Sattva, has all the qualities of its upadhis, and therefore he is Jnani, Sarvajna. But unfortunately for Jiva, being overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna, he is relatively ignorant or predominantly ignorant. That is the classification. That's what has been referred here. Shuddha Sattva Guna Pradhanatvat Asya Sarvajnatva Siddhihi. Because Ishvara is predominant in Shuddha Sattva Maya, he is Sarvajna. स्वप्रतिबंधकीभूत रजस्तमसी अभिभूय स्वयं ताभ्याम अनभिभूतः यः सत्वगुणः तस्य शुद्ध सत्वमित्याख्या. What is शुद्ध सत्व? स्वप्रतिबंधकीभूत रजस्तमसी. रजश्च तमश्च रजस्तमसौ ते. So Raja and Tama, Rajoguna and Tamoguna, both tau abhi swapratibandhaki bhuta. What are they? Swa pratibandha. Pratibandha, obstructing. Those which obstruct oneself. Obstructing oneself, covering. Which form? Veiling. So Rajoguna and Tamoguna, which cover the Sattva Guna or Jnana, tamsi abhibhuya ताभ्याम अनविभूतः यः सत्वगुणः, covering them, overpowering those Trajoguna and Tamoguna, which in reality are overpowering and not getting overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. Why so? Understand it in this way. It is one thing to not get overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna, and it is different overpowering Rajoguna and Tamoguna. How do you say so? Simple. In absence of any experience, it can never be proved that person is overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. Or when there is Samyavastha, all gunas are in balance. They are totally balanced. In such state, Sattva Guna is not overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. But because Sattva Guna is not overpowering Rajoguna and Tamoguna, it is not showing its inherent properties also. For Sattva Guna to express its inherent properties, that is Jnana, etc., it not just have to overpower Rajoguna and Tamoguna, but also not get overpowered by them. For Jiva, it is partial. Sometimes it overpowers Rajoguna and Tamoguna, and most of the times it is overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna. For Jiva, most of the time, Jiva Sattva Guna is overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna, and sometimes his Sattva Guna overpowers Rajoguna and Tamoguna. But for Ishvara, his Sattva Guna never gets overpowered by Rajoguna and Tamoguna, but it always overpowers them, dominates them. That such Sattva Guna is called as Shuddha Sattva. That has been referred to as Shuddha Sattva. Sattvagunat eva jnanam utpadyate. On account of Sattva-guna alone, knowledge is born. Knowledge is there. Ataha, therefore, Sattva-gunaha prakasha swabhavaha. Sattva-guna is of the nature of prakasha, light. When we refer to it as light, it is jnana. Whenever it is said prakasha, most of the time it refers to jnana, that which illumines, that which makes something else known. That which makes us know things is called as prakasha. Evam bhuta sattva guna pradhana mayayam pratiphalita chaitanyabhasa rupeshwarasya swavishaye vishyantareva naiva avaranam sambhavati tasmat ishvaraha nityamuktaha sarvajnasya bhavati. Evam, in this way, bhuta sattva, evam bhuta, in this way, sattva guna pradhana mayayam, maya which is sattva guna pradhana, in such maya, pratiphalita chaitanyabhasa rupa ishwarasya. Chaitanyabhasa chidabhasa rupa. Pratiphalita, that which has got reflected. So the Chaitanya which has got reflected in Shuddha Sattva Maya, such Ishvara, Swavishaye Vishyantareva, for oneself and for something else. Swavishaye, about oneself and about something else. Naiva avaranam sambhavati. Avarana is not possible at all. Swavishaye Vishyantare, I will simplify. Knowing oneself and knowing something else. Swavishay, about oneself, and Vishayantare, about anything and everything which is different from me. Neither avarana, ignorance, is possible for oneself or anything else. Therefore, Ishvara, tasmat Ishvara nityamuktaha sarvajnasya bhavati. Therefore, Ishvara is called as Nityamukta, ever liberated, and Sarvajna, all knowing, omniscient. Understand it in this way, it will be easier. Swavishaye Vishyantare avaranam naiva sambhavati. Ignorance is impossible for Ishvara about oneself and about things different from oneself. Do we know ourselves in reality who we are? No. So there is avarana about our own true nature. At the same time, do we know everything about this entire creation? No. So there are many objects about which we have no idea avarana is there. So we have avarana, veiling or ignorance about our own self, at the same time objects which are different from me. But such ignorance is not there for Ishvara. Ishvara knows his own true nature, at the same time each and every aspect of this entire creation. Therefore, Ishvara is Nityamukta and Sarvajna. जीवेश्वरयोः अधिष्ठानभूतं शुद्धचैतन्यं बन्धमोक्षादि निखिलभेदशून्यं सदा आकाशवत् एकरसस्वभावं तयोः भयोः अपि वर्तते. बन्धमोक्षादिस्तु आभासांशे एव. जीवेश्वरयोः अधिष्ठानभूतं शुद्धचैतन्यं. Shuddha the pure consciousness, which forms the adhisthana for Jiva and Ishvara. That Chaitanya, Bandhamokshadi Nikhila Bheda Shunyam. Nikhila, all, Bheda, Shunyam, in which no differences are present, which does not have any differences at all, which does not have Bandha and Moksha, for which Bandha and Moksha is not there. Sada, always, all the time. Akashavat, like total space. Ekarasa Swabhavam, in form of one, always same. Ekarasa, homogeneous, one and one alone. Tayoho ubhayoho api vartate. For both of them it is present. Let's simplify. Just as the total space forms the adhisthana, the substratum for pot space or pot water space and cloud space. So the space which is contained within the pot and space reflected in water contained within the pot, for those both, the total space alone forms the substratum. For cloud space, the space reflected in water vapors inside the cloud, and the space in which clouds are suspended, that space is also total space. So total space is common for both, and that space is unaffected, untouched all the time. Similarly, the Shuddha Chaitanya, which forms the substratum for both Jiva and Ishvara, does not have any bandha, moksha, etc. So the qualities, attributes, that is, whether it is bandha or moksha, or whether it is sarvajñatva or sarveshwaratva, etc., all those do not belong to Shuddha Chaitanya, pure consciousness. Then, to whom do they belong? Bandha mokshadistu abhasangshe eva. Bandha and moksha are seen in abhasa ansha, the superimposition or the superimposed part of jiva. That which is superimposition, or better it can be phrased in this way: that superimposition which forms jiva, that superimposition which forms jiva, to that superimposition all these qualities belong. What forms jiva? Buddhi, ajnana, individual ignorance. So bandha moksha belongs to that buddhi. Adhishthane chaitanye tu abhasasya bhrantya pratiyate. But in adhishthana chaitanya, consciousness which forms substratum, in that consciousness all these appear bhrantya, out of delusion. Tasmat, therefore, kevalabhase eva bandhamokshadi vyavaharaha. In abhasa alone, in superimposition alone, in upadhi alone, bandha mokshadi vyavaharaha. The vyavahara, it can be said that bondage and liberation belong to upadhi. Bondage, etc., they belong to upadhi alone. Tatrapi asti etavan bhedaha. There also this difference is there. Yasmin abhase sarupavaranam asti tasmin eva bandhaha. In that superimposition, in that abhasa, where swarupa avaranam is there, veiling over the knowledge of one's true nature is there, there alone bondage is seen. Where the such avaranam is not there, yatra tad nasti satu mukta eva. Where such, okay, we will complete this, then we will analyze this whole thing. Ishvare avarana bhavadeva sanitya muktaha. Jive tu avarana satvat saha baddha yatah yasya avidyayaha anshe प्रतिबिंबितस्य चिदाभासस्य जीवत्वं भवति तस्याः अविद्यायाः आवरकत्वं स्वभावः. There where such veiling is there, veiling or covering of one's true nature is present, in there, in that upadhi, bandha moksha is seen. That in which this bandha moksha is absent, for that bandha moksha is not seen. Such avarana, such covering is absent for Ishvara, therefore Ishvara is nitya mukta. But for jiva, such avaranam is there. Why? Because in avidya, avidyayaha anshe प्रतिबिम्बितस्य चिदाभासस्य जीवत्वं भवति तस्याः अविद्यायाः आवर्कत्वं स्वभावः. The avidya, the ignorance because of, the reflected consciousness appearing in avidya. Now this is again slight technical jargon, but I will make multiple statements and explain. What is being said here is simple. So for Jiva, what is the Upadhi? The Upadhi is avidya, which is predominant in Rajoguna and Tamoguna. In that avidya, consciousness is being reflected. That reflected consciousness is Chidabhasa. And that reflected consciousness is reflecting in avidya. The nature of that avidya is covering one's own true nature. And because the nature of avidya is covering one's own true nature, knowledge of one's own true nature, such avidya covers the knowledge of one's true nature for Jiva. Therefore, Jiva does not know his own true nature. यद्यपि एकस्यैव वस्तुनः माया अज्ञानम् अविद्या इत्यादि नामानि तथापि तस्यैव शुद्धसत्त्वगुणप्रधानत्वात् माया इति मलिनसत्त्वगुणप्रधानत्वात् च अज्ञानम् अविद्या इति च व्यवहारः. So for the sake of explanation, even though Maya is one and the same, also called as synonymously termed as Ajnana, Avidya, etc., but for the sake of explanation, Maya refers to, the term Maya refers to that Maya or that Prakriti which is predominant in Shuddha Sattva. And Ajnana refers to that Maya Prakriti which is predominant in Malina Sattva. Malina Sattva Guna and Shuddha Sattva Guna. रजस्तमो गुणाभ्याम अभिभूतः सत्वगुणः मलिन सत्वगुण इत्युच्यते. That rajoguna and tamoguna which is, or that sattva-guna which is overpowered by rajoguna and tamoguna, that is called as malina sattva. रजस्तमोगुणाधिक्यात् एव अविद्यायाः स्वप्रतिबिंबित जीवरूप चिदाभासांशस्यावरणं करोति. अत एव जीवः बद्धः न ईश्वरः. And because it is predominant in rajoguna and tamoguna, that avidya covers the knowledge of one's true nature for jiva, and therefore jiva is bound and Ishvara is not bound. सर्वाधिष्ठान भूत शुद्ध चैतन्य सहितः माया सर्वाधिष्ठान भूत शुद्ध चैतन्य सहितः माया प्रतिबिंबित चिदाभास रूप ईश्वरः तत्पदवाच्यार्थः. So what is tatpadavacyartha? Direct meaning of tatpada, Ishvara. Which Ishvara? Sarvadhisthana bhuta shuddha chaitanya sahita. The shuddha chaitanya which forms the substratum for everything. That is Brahman. Maya pratibhimbita chidabhasa rupa Ishvara. And Maya pratibhimbita chidabhasa. Reflected consciousness or consciousness reflecting in Maya, available as reflected consciousness. They both together form Ishvara, and that such is the direct meaning of Ishvara. Indirect meaning, the upadhi of Ishvara is also taken for consideration, is also known. Kevala adhisthana shuddha chaitanyam tatpada lakshyartha. But If you take away the upadhi, the conditioning which forms Ishvara, that adhisthana chaitanya, that chaitanya which forms substratum, when it is left behind, that Shuddha Chaitanya is the implied meaning of Ishvara. Ishvara Jagadutpatti Sthiti Samharan Karoti iti Shastroktehe Ayam Abhiprayah. When it is said that Ishvara is the cause of creation, sustenance and destruction of this entire creation, this is what is being said or implied. Adhisthana-bhuta Shuddha Chaitanyam Akashavadasangam. But the Adhisthana-bhuta Chaitanya, that Brahman, is Akashavat, like space, asanga, untouched and unaffected. Maya pratibhimbita chidabhasanshah jagadutpatyadikam karoti sarvajnatwadi gunaha api tasyaiva. That ansha, that part, which is Maya pratibhimbita chidabhasa, which is reflected in its conditioning, which is Maya. That ansha, that part, does everything from creation of this entire world to being sarvajna, to being omniscient, omnipotent, etc. Bhaktanugrahadi kartrutvam aishwaryantaramapi tasyaiva chidabhasanshasya. So, doing anugraha, doing well, or bhakta anugraha, for devotees, being present, being there, all these which are referred to as Ishvara, everything, Aishwarya, its own glory, everything, glory of Ishvara in reality belongs to that Chidabhasansha, that reflected consciousness part, and not to Brahman. Chaitanya Swarupam tu Ekarasam Sarvasamam. But that Chaitanya is one and the same for all. Tasmin Sattaspurti Pradattvamantara Anyat Aishwaryadikam Nakinchid Upapadyate iti. What does then that Adhisthana Bhuta Chaitanya do? What does Adhisthana Chaitanya do is, it gives Satta and Spurti, existence and consciousness. That because of which things exist is Brahman, and that because of which things are known is Brahman. So these Satta and Spurti, those are given because of to Ishvara, or anything else because of Brahman. Now, after having explained what is Ishvara, its direct meaning and implied meaning, Brahman is now being explained. Brahmaswarupa Varnanam. Mahakashavat Brahmandanam antarbahishya vyapya Vartamanam akhanda paripurna chaitanyam Brahma ityuchyate. Bhashye cha uktam Brahma shabdasya hi vyutpadyamanasya nityashuddhatvadayorthaha pratiyante bruhatehe dhatoho arthanugamat sarvasya atmatvacha brahmastitva prasiddhihi. Mahakashavat, like total space. Mahakashavat, Brahmandanam antarbahishya vyapya, having pervaded in and through this entire creation or creations, Brahmandanam. Vartamanam, that which exists. Akhanda paripurna chaitanyam, akhanda, without any parts, paripurna, whole, complete. Chaitanya, consciousness. That Chaitanya is called as Brahman. That is Brahma. in Bhashya, in Brahma Sutra Bhashya, Bhashyakara Adi Shankaracharya ji explains and defines what is Brahman. Brahma Shabdasya hi Vitpadyamanasya नित्यशुद्धत्वादयो अर्थाः प्रतीयन्ते बृहतेः धातोः अर्थानुगमात्. From bruhi vruddhau dhatu, this Brahman Shabda can be etymologically created. So the etymology of this Brahman Shabda is being now said. So from bruh dhatu, this word Brahman is created. Now this Brahman is or this Brahman indicates to the meaning such as Nitya Shuddhatva, always pure, without any defect. Arthanugamat, from the artha of Brihadhatu, these meanings are understood. Explanation is going to come later, but understand it in this way. Brihadhatu by itself may not explain all these meanings, but the meaning of Brihadhatu indicates towards these meanings. Sarvasya atmatvacha brahmastitva prasiddhi, and being the self of all, Brahman is known to everyone. Known to everyone, everybody has some idea. They may not have Brahmajnana as such per se, but they know that Brahman is. They may not call it Brahman. They may refer to it as is. Interestingly, when I say an object is, that isness is Vachaka, the pointer for Brahman. That is refers to Brahman. So, Ratna Prabhayam api evam vyakyatam. So, Ratna Prabha is sub-commentary on that Brihadaranyaka Bhashya. There, this statement is further explained. Sacha arthaha mahatva rupa iti vyakaranat nishchiyate. Mahatva, mahat, vast, big. Simple. Just understand big, enormous, giant. That's it. Just understand big. This meaning Vyakaranat Nishyate, from Vyakarana. The word, the meaning of Brahman, Bruhdhatu, is big. Bruhi Vruddhau iti smaranat. So in Dhatu Patha, Bruha, what is the meaning of Bruha? Vruddhau. That which goes on expanding, which grows, which is big. Sacha Vruddhihi, that bigness, that expanse, that growth is Niravadhika Mahatvam iti. Niravadhika, Avadhi is just, sorry. Niravadhika, without any limitations. We can say he grew as big as mountain. So we have limited its growth. We have put certain limit to its growth or to its vastness, to its expanse. But this Bruha does not have any such limitation. Sankochaka bhavat shrutau anantapadena sahaprayogacha jnayata iti. And there is nothing which can compress, which can limit, which can shorten it. And that's why in Shruti, This Brahman is referred to as Ananta. Na antaha. There is no expanse to its growth. Ataha. Therefore, Brahmanat Brahma iti vyutpatya. देश काल वस्तुकृत परिच्छेदाभाव रूपम नित्यत्वम प्रतीयते इति च. Bruhanat, that which grows, that which expands, that which pervades, that is Brahman. By this etymology, that by this meaning, that which is desha kala vastukruta, desha parichinnata, limited by place, kala, time, and object. Limitations of place or space, time, and object. Such limitations are not there, absent. And when such are not there, it is nitya. Na antaha anantaha. If I tell you that which pervades all is Brahman. Now, how big can it be? Just go on imagining. Try to encompass its growth. Try to encompass its vastness. There is no end. You can never imagine, because if we are to imagine anything which is big, it is always relative. The bigness that we perceive is always relative to some other object. But for Brahman, there is no such other object with which it can be compared. And because there is no other object with which it can be compared, it is limitless. When we say it is limitless, we have to understand it does not have limitations of place or space, time, and object. What are these obstructions? Right now I am here and I am not in other room. That means I am limited by this particular place or space. I was not there before my birth. Right now I am there, but after death, I, as this body, as this jiva, will not be there. That is limited by time and vastukruta parichheda. A clock or a watch is not there in mirror. Mirror is not there in watch. So they have vastukruta parichheda, limited by object. Such limitations are absent in thing, in a thing which is not limited, which is all pervasive. Therefore, that which is not limited can never get destroyed. And because it never gets destroyed, it is nitya, eternally present. So, further explanation of what is Brahman, that we will see next time. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.